Hey everyone, welcome to Reverse Homesteading. Today we're going to make a basic sourdough loaf. The original recipe is from clevercarrot.com. I'll link that below. Thank you very much to Ellie Raffa, who's given permission for me to use her recipe here and put in all the hard work. It's a very easy recipe. I really struggled to make sourdough before I found that recipe, so thanks for all your hard work on that, Emily. So basic things that you'll need: baker's flour or hard wheat flour, bread making flour it's usually called. You'll need some olive oil, some sea salt. Rock salt is not what you want. I found that out the hard way. Rock salt is way too salty. So you need sea salt, kosher salt, pickling salt. In Australia they call it cooking salt, but I'm not sure if cooking salt is the same all the way around the world. So check the recipe in the description. You'll need some sort of sourdough starter that's active and bubbly. It'll be going up the jar, not down. So this one I've been moving it around a bit, but it's still all marshmallowy and quite happy to get going on something. So you can actually get sourdough starter flakes and reactivate it yourself. Otherwise, I'll put a link here in the top of the screen to show you where my video is for making a sourdough starter from scratch. You need water that's half boiling, half room temperature is how I get to the right temperature. It's just a bit above body temperature. The temperature doesn't matter so much as long as it's definitely warm, and I use filtered water because I know there aren't any nasties there. I do have some extra filtered water here at the right temperature, so if the initial amount is not enough, sometimes the weather's different or the flour's slightly different. So just have some spare water that's the right temperature on hand, and then you can quickly get it into the recipe and you don't need to stop and wait and get the water to the right temperature. The other thing you'll need is some sort of a casserole dish that will keep steam in. So this one came from an op shop or a thrift shop, so I was pretty happy about that. It's cast iron, but it doesn't have to be. Just a normal casserole dish with a lid should work in most instances. Baking paper or silicone paper is good to line that with. You need to make sure that the bread doesn't stick, or you can use finely ground cornmeal in the base. That's a really traditional thing to do so that your bread doesn't stick. We'll get this recipe started. I usually use a spatula just because it helps scrape things in a bit more easily. I put the salt in first, which I believe is something that the recipe doesn't do, but I just sort of mix it around with the water for a bit. I don't know if it matters, but follow the recipe strictly if you feel like you should do that. So it's basically putting everything all in at once. So here's our sourdough starter going in. That's another reason I like the spatula, because you don't waste any of the starter, which is nice. I sort of like to think that this is keeping the sourdough starter a little bit warm with the quite warm water there. We've got our 25 grams of oil, and then last thing we put in is the 500 grams of flour. So don't forget the imperial measurements are in the recipe by Emily. Links in the description, as I said. So there we go. There are all of the ingredients in. Just give that a bit of a mix to start with. Just gently bring it all together. If you want to do it with wholemeal flour, you can if you like. I find that it doesn't rise as much, but you can do it however you like to do it. It's your bread. So we already need some of this water. It's a little bit stiff to start with. I tend to make a dough that's a bit stickier, but it'll depend upon what the weather's like at your place, how warm it is in your house. There are a lot of different factors. I might even put a little bit more. Whoops. a little bit more around the edges. That may be too much now, but that's okay. As I said, we're looking at the dough. The basic quantities there are a sort of a fail-safe measure, which is fantastic because they're the things that actually keep us on the straight and narrow. But if you need a little bit more water, you need a little bit more water. So what we're doing here is making what they call shaggy dough. So only just mixing it really, so that it's all together in a bit of a lump. At this point there's no need to make a bowl. We're just getting all of the ingredients together in the one place. So you can see a little bit of the oil here still. That's okay. It'll combine eventually. So I've got some cling wrap or cling film, glad wrap, with olive oil on one side. You can cover it with a cloth of any kind you like. It just keeps perhaps some bugs out, but it keeps some of the warmth in as well, I believe. So I'll just leave that to autolyse, which just means to rest. So the gluten in the flour needs to rest, and you will feel quite different when you touch it again in half an hour or an hour's time to do our first stretching of the dough. Sourdough, you don't actually need it. For this method, you just stretch it, and it's quite simple, and it's actually not so messy. I do it not even needing the bench. I'll show you that in just a few moments. So here is our rested dough. It's been an hour or so. An hour is better than half an hour. So just get our hands in here, and you can see straight away it's very different to what it was before. Let's grab it out of here. It smells amazing too, actually. So I'll just pull it out of there, make sure I've got most of it. And what we're going to do is, well, what I try to do is keep it over the bowl. You don't have to add any more flour. So that's one fold. Turn it counterclockwise. Doesn't matter which way you turn it. Fold it in half again. It's a little bit of a sticky dough. As I said, I think I added a little bit too much water. And that's our fourth turn. You really only need 4 turns. It's not as stretchy on the fourth turn, so just wiggle it a little and fold it over again, and then just gently put it into a round or a ball. And I'm just going to put it straight back in there. Some people grease the bowl again, but now we're going to put it back in there to rest again and to rise. This is what we used before, and making sure that the olive oil is on the correct side so that it can rise more easily. And we'll leave that until it spreads out quite a bit and is visibly larger. Best if it's almost double in size. I'll do another stretch and fold before we get to that. So, stretch, quarter turn, stretch, quarter turn, stretch, quarter turn, stretch. Alright, we've done our bulk rise. I did mine overnight just because it worked for time. But hoping it hasn't risen too much. My goodness, it's huge. So we'll just grab it out of here. It will obviously deflate as you pull it out. I actually went back over Emily's recipe again and thought, oh, I actually do a couple of things a little differently. And I'll show you that in a minute. So, still quite sticky because I added that extra water at the beginning. If you stuck to the original 250 grams of water, your dough will feel a little different. As I was saying, I have diverged from the original recipe a little with my own habits over time. I usually don't look the recipe up, actually. I just go by memory, and yeah, it's changed over time. So do the real recipe first so you know what you're doing. And this is really more of a walkthrough by a gardener rather than a baker. So I've got half the dough here, and I'm just going to do what I showed you, where you don't even need to flour the bench if you don't want to. So I just sort of take it from hand to hand, and because I do quite a sticky dough, I guess it works. See, that's holding together underneath, and I just put a bit of pressure on it so that it's getting pulled over at the top. This is actually stickier than usual. Oh my goodness, it's sticking everywhere. Alright, but that's just demonstrating what I usually do because I don't usually need extra flour. I probably should have needed extra flour for that one. So into the dish that goes. And this one I'll do the proper way. So not using the flour. What we're doing is intending to catch the base of this little ball on the bottom of the bench so that you would have seen bakers do this thing on social media quite a bit. So you do a little quarter turn and just sort of plop it back on the bench, and because this is so sticky, it doesn't actually need the extra flour, but perhaps it should have had the extra flour in the mixture. So what we're doing is tightening the ball here. So just do this until you're happy with it, as the recipe says. So then the dough is going over and it will help increase the volume as it cooks because the air will be kind of trapped in there. Even though we need the steam to be doing its thing, it will help it rise and do really well. So you can do that as the same. You can do that the same with one loaf, or you can do two as I have. And then just as you pick it up, it's easy to mold it into a bit more of an elongated shape. And you can see that ball is definitely tighter than the one that I made first. So that's the Emily way. That's what I have been doing. Alright, so our dough has relaxed somewhat as well as risen a bit. As I said, we're not looking for double at this point. We're just looking at being a little bit more risen, and you can see the big difference. The dough was pretty much split in half, and the round that I've done the way that Emily presented, like bakers do, they usually actually keep their hand over it a bit more, but my dough was so sticky it was hard to manage. But approximately the way that it's supposed to be done, so much lighter than my loose little loaf here. So as I said, I haven't been scoring the loaf. Hubby doesn't like it too full of air. He likes a denser kind of squishy loaf. So I'm going to do this the proper way and do probably just one big score on that one. And I use just a serrated little steak knife that we've got. I don't have any of the sourdough tools. I don't have any of the bannetons or proofing baskets. That would probably be good to make sure it doesn't spread too much. And some of them even have measurements on the side, like the recipe says, so you would really know where you're at. I'm a bit laissez-faire if you're watching my gardening channel. In general, you would know that. I'm just like, But yes, I will do this one the proper way and see how this one turns out as well. So you can compare and see if you want to do it my lazy way or do it the proper way. So it says about a 1/4 inch deep on the recipe. We'll just go for it. Just be brave. The sharper the better for this kind of tool. So it's probably deeper than you would think it needs, but it kind of needs that to let the steam escape. So the oven is hot enough now. We'll put the lid on. Don't forget to put the lid on because that keeps all of the steam in. We're ready to go. We're going to very carefully get the lid off at 20 minutes into the cooking. You can see a little bit of colour, and the one in the distance is the one that's scored. So that's visibly letting some steam out. So we're going to leave these loaves here to cool down for at least an hour. No matter how hungry or excited you are, don't cut into them for an hour so they cool down and the texture doesn't go gummy. So here we are, actually a few hours later, They're definitely cool, and we'll have a look at these. So remember, they were done 2 different ways. So this is the original recipe where it's shaped to be a tight sort of round and then just ever so slightly stretched into that. This is my one that I'd fallen into bad habits with, but not scored. This one was scored here. This one has found its own way to get the steam out. Usually it doesn't do that, so perhaps it was a particularly good batch. So let's break them apart and see what's happening. I left them together. It's like scones or scones. They're best left together till they cool a little. So this is the original recipe loaf. We'll just cut it through the center and see what it looks like on the inside. Lovely sourdough crust. Love that sound. So you've got beautiful holes, very squishy, lovely loaf. Alright, what's the second one like? So this will be a looser texture, I'm guessing. It's hard to know. Usually it doesn't find its own way to let the steam out. Usually it stays together as a loaf and then it has a lot less holes, a lot smaller holes. Oh, that's interesting. It's very similar. I think this one actually had a little bit more dough than the other one. But yeah, side by side. Interesting. So this could have just had more dough. So shape it quite tightly and you'll be fine after you've scored it. So thank you for watching. If you've made it this far through the video, well done. Hope you're having fun in the garden and in the kitchen. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.